this, what we're going to do is are these standoffs and mount those with these little screws. And I actually messed up on my order and ordered the wrong size lock washer. These are supposed to be number 4. I ordered something else. I'm not sure what, but they're too big. At any rate, as you can see here, what came in the mail are way bigger than what I needed. So, at any rate, that's fortunately I save all my spare parts from when I stripped down units and things. I went in my parts bin in there and the nuts and washers and found these. So I've got 8 good ones to use here. And we're going to get busy mounting these standoffs in there. And as you can see, this is how the 4 standoffs are going to mount here. Now, what I've done is on the bottom side, I put basically a screw here and a washer, and I held these in place. Let me show you a trick. You'll notice here, I've left them a little loose. I did that on purpose. That way when I go to mount this board, if I need a little bit of wiggle room one way or the other, I'll have it. Because these actual holes I drilled, have a little bit of room here for this thing to slide back and forth just a hair. Which will help with mounting these things. And then once I get the top part mounted, I'll go back underneath on the bottom and tighten those up really well. And as you can see, I got all 4 screws in there. They were easy to put in because those bottom ones weren't so fixed. Just a tad bit of wiggle room there. Now all I got to do is flip this thing over on its back and tighten up these screws and we'll be good to go. And we got the 4 bottom ones mounted up really well. Now all we got to do is, check this out. Mounted down solid as a rock, right in place where it should be. We'll have to figure out the connections from this out the bottom at some point, so I may end up having to take it loose to solder wires to it, but we'll get to that point here in a little while. And up next is my hash brown casserole and sausage casserole here that my wife made me for breakfast, but just kidding. Now that we've got this mounted in here, I'm going to get these 2 boards built. I pushed the amp back now. We're going to get busy building these boards. I have to unwrap them here and get busy with them. Okay, looking at this schematic, the instructions here. Basically, if you read through it, it tells you to install all the resistors. So R1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 6, 7. Then basically install all the microcapacitors, then the film capacitors, and the remaining film capacitors here. Then you can do the tube sockets last, and then basically it says, hey, I highly recommend you double check your assembly, which we will do. And they give us a nice little picture here after the schematic, the parts list of how it should look once installed on the board. So we're gonna get at it. And if you'll notice what I'm doing here, I've installed R1 and I've installed R1. I'm going to do these boards together, so each time I install something on one, I'll install it on the other. And me being the ADD that I have, I've made sure that the color coding is pointed in the same direction on both of these. So we'll go through and continue putting stuff in here on both sides one at a time. Just thought I'd show you here as I'm soldering them. As I push the leads through, I kind of bend them outwards to hold the resistors in place, and then I hit them with the solder on each side. Make sure not only the board traces get good and hot, but the leads get good and hot as well, so that the solder adheres to both of them. And then just come along with our little snips here and kind of do our due diligence on each one of them here. And snip the leads off, and we'll be good to go. Okay, you can see here where I've got all the resistors soldered in now at this point, and we're going to move on to the capacitors. Everything looking good here. Nice solder blobs. You can see I'm flowing the solder all the way through to the other side. As I get these things hot enough, it's actually pulling the solder through. Make sure we got really good connections on all these things. Okay, we've been installing capacitors now. You can see I kind of got here, 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 and down here, and now I started on the larger kind of poly audio coupling caps. One thing that'll fool you a little bit here, it says C5, and you look at these 2 little holes here and you're like, whoa, that's not going to fit. But then you realize these outer 2 holes, if you flip the board over, are just kind of connected, so it gives you more room here. And you can see how how I actually soldered this one in here. Looks really good too. Gonna keep stuffing this thing, as they would say. And they are, the boards are now stuffed. All the components are in them, and turned out well. Got all the lettering on top here so you can easily see it. Got all the lettering pointing in the same direction, easy to read. Nice little matched set of boards here. Up next, some tube sockets. That should be fun. Okay, if you'll notice, there are right here two different types of tube sockets. These all came from Tube Depot. They're really good tube sockets. These are tab mount, and you can see here and they mount from the bottom, so they come up from below, and they will go into these slots. And then you've got these here, which are solder in, and they will go right here. So we're going to get the solder in ones done and mount these others, and these will go into these, and these three will go into this, and we'll about have this thing ready to mount. Okay, we got this one soldered all in good, went all the way around. A little bit of solder resin kind of splattered out around, but the connections are really good and solid. And then I got these mounted, and you got to pay real close attention here. Let me show you on the pictures here to where these mount. So you'll notice here the open pin hole here between pin 1 and 9 is on this side here, but on this tube it's over here on this side. One other interesting thing I noticed when I went to install these, they kind of go from this metal ridge right here to this metal ridge right here, which pushes up inside of these. Well, these boards were really, really tight. In other words, didn't fit in there quite exactly. So I ended up using an X-Acto knife here and just kind of scraping along the sides enough just to, it didn't take a lot, just scraped off one side on each of these, and finally these things would pop through there. And then I've got some really nice little black hex head screws here with matching 440 nuts that have actually the lock washers built into them. So I'm going to use that to hold the tube sockets in place here on these things. Alright, check it out. Those little black pan head screws look great. And on the other side you can see here they came through, bolted up well. The screws are a little bit long, but they're way shorter than these leads, and they'll drop down inside of here, so there's plenty of clearance room for those things. Pretty happy with the way that turned out. Now I just got to get the other one looking just like it. Okay, the boards are done at this point. Looking really good and all mounted up nice and tight. Really happy with how they turned out, and only one challenge at this point. Everything to this point's kind of been step-by-step instructions, exactly what to do, one page after another after another. And now you get to this point and you realize, well, this thing was never really, these were designed to be drop-in replacements for either an ST35 Dynaco amp or an SCA35 Dynaco amp. And since that's not what we're doing here, kind of building from scratch an amplifier, we're going to have to make the rest of the connections, like between the transformer, the power transformer, the audio output transformers, the power supply, the output boards, all these connections we're going to have to make on our own, which really just takes us back then to the schematic here. So we'll have to figure this part out ourselves from the two schematics that they provided us, along with, actually that's the board for the power supply. And so we're going to have to just figure that out, as well as go back to probably a original schematic and figure out where these things would go. But we'll do that along the way, and I'm going to get these things mounted in here looking really nice, and I'll show you that. And we've got the boards all mounted in here now. Nice screws on this side. You can see what I used here. They're 440 3/8 inch from the Nutty company, Nutty.com, and I bought these off eBay. But anyway, you can get them in a 100 pack, and things go a long ways towards mounting tube sockets and whatnot. Really good looking screw heads, as you can see here. I love the black on black here look. So keep going with it. And I've just used an ordinary grinding wheel on a Dremel tool here. And you can see here I've cleaned me out a nice ground spot around this lug right here, this hole that was in the chassis. I'm going to come from the top down with a bolt and put a little terminal strip right here. And as you can see here, I've mounted a little 3-lug binding post with one of those being grounded here to that center post. And I changed my mind. I took the 3-lug off and put on a 5-lug or 6-lug strip here. I'll probably end up cutting it down here on this one end. I really just need like 4 connections here. I'll tell you, I've been studying this schematic a lot, and it's a little complicated. It's not too bad, but if you realize what I'm doing, I'm basically taking an SCA35 power supply board, marrying it up with some ST35 output boards, and building it. All the instructions that are provided from an interesting point of reference. They're provided from a point of reference of you've already got a fully functional either ST35 or SCA35, and what you're doing is you're removing things and modifying to put this in. So there's really no instructions here from a point of reference of just doing this thing from scratch like I'm doing, which is fine. I'll figure it out. It's just you know, when you find a connection here like number 7 or number 5, or over here where it says C24A, well, what the heck do they mean by C24A? So I'm having to backtrack through basically their current instructions into the original instructions that would have came with like an SCA35 to actually figure out what should go into that spot. So we'll get it. It's just taking a little bit of brain power there. Okay, let me show you what I've done here. I brought the 2 red wires out of this power transformer, and you can kind of see here, you're wondering, why do I have these chunks missing? Well, it's because these wires are old, brittle, and breaking, and they both had, this far down, break spots. Let me show you here on this one. I got the exact same thing going on. This is actually the red-yellow wire coming out of the power transformer. As you can see right here, it's got a bend in it, and the cloth-covered wire is starting to show through right here. So it's likely that it may be getting corroded in there, and the wires may actually break at some point in time. So I'm going to end up cutting this off right here and routing it over here onto this 3rd strip. I might even have to extend this wire because I don't think it'll be long enough, but you can see what I'm struggling with here a little bit. These are old cloth-covered wires, and you bend them a little bit, and they start to break. And you can see what I've done here is I tinned both pieces of wire, then got some solder, and I soldered them together really well, and twisted them a little bit, and then soldered them really well. I'm going to put some heat shrink over that, and then what I'm going to do is use a red marker and actually color this wire so it's yellow and red like the original one was. However, the original one is so faded you'd have a hard time telling it was yellow and red to begin with. Alright, I thought it was suiting. I used some red heat shrink tubing here, and as you can see, I've used a red magic marker here and colored me some red and yellow stripes on it, which hey, look much better than the original yellow and red stripes. But we're going to get that soldered over here as well. Alright, we've got the 2 red wires coming out here now, and you know, good and solid, no breaks in them anywhere, soldered on. And then we've got up here on the top one, you can see my nicely colored do-it-yourself yellow and red wire, and I've connected it to ground here on this lug. If you'll remember, over here on the schematic, it's kind of hard to see, but coming out of the power transformer, you've got red, and you've got red-yellow, which goes to ground here in the middle. And these two will ultimately, these 2 reds will end up feeding into D1, which will be up here in this SCA35 board. And now we've also connected the 2 black wires. So what this has done for me personally, may not do anything for you, but it's taken these old fragile power supply transformer wires and it's kind of secured them here into a solid place that they're not going anywhere. And then when I solder to them, going off to other places, then in the board, you know, I'm not bending these wires, and they're not susceptible to breaking. So to me, it's just preserving the life of the transformer wires here by mounting them to a terminal strip and securing that here to ground. And as you can see, we've now got the 2 red wires feeding up into the TS1 hole 4 and 5 here, and off the schematic you can see here 4 and 5 feed into the diodes here. And if you flip back over, that's what I'm saying, it's not all on one page. If you flip back over here, then you'll see that the coming out of the transformer, it's actually red. That's supposed to go to 4 and 5. So we're getting there, one little step at a time. Okay, getting ready to mount the speaker jacks and banana plug terminal speaker connectors, and these holes are too small. The little cutouts inside these things don't go inside that, so it just kind of wobbles around. But I was able to cleanly and nicely drill out these little holes right here, and they fit nice and snug once you do that. Right there. And the way I do that is I use a chassis punch, basically, or I can't remember what they call these things, but designed to drill out holes in chassis and whatnot, chassis punch. But if you notice, I used a white grease pencil here, and I marked a spot on my blade so that I know as I'm going in here where to stop right before the white. And I'll drill out all 4 of these. It's really simple to do. I mean, it's as simple as you start pulling the trigger on this thing, and 2 seconds later it's eating you right into the next size larger hole there. And so you can just kind of notch how far you want to go. If you want to go one larger hole, you could, and you could see if but I think these fit in there pretty well at this point in time. And with it back on the bench, you can see here, got them nice and drilled out, nice and clean and neat. Mounted in the fuse holder in here. I like to pull fuse holders off of old gear. You know, stuff from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. The old fuse holders, these things are just mammoth, made extremely well. These things are like $10 if you try to buy a new one in that kind of quality. So I salvage a lot off of old gear, and give this thing a little bit of vintage. Let's get these speaker terminals mounted. And ta-da! Starting to look like an amplifier. Got them all mounted in here, screwed down. I always go ahead and put the second nut on here just as a kind of a lock nut to hold the first ones. Remember the trick of when you put these things on, always screw these out before you tighten the things down. But yeah, these things are in here solid as a rock. There's no movement, there's no anything. I mean, just the way it should be done. Just 2 more holes to fill here on the back side. This one's pretty easy. It'll be a you know, a power cord here with a you know, typical little this style strain relief that snaps in there and holds the cord in place. I'll end up just putting a 3-prong computer cord in there, and I'll bring one lead, the ground lead, over here and ground it to this chassis spot just as well. And then I've got this odd shaped square hole that was cut here from the factory, presumably in my mind for a snap-in style switch. Well, I went through all the switches I have here, and I don't have a square snap-in style switch that size, and what I'd end up having to do is measure that hole and then search online probably for hours to find a switch that would fit that. But what I did find, and I've used these on a few other amplifiers as I've modified them, it's a rocker style switch, just simple on and off, and it's round. And what I learned a long time ago is if you drill a 3/4 inch hole, this thing will slide right into it. Good news is I measured from here to here and it's about 3/4 inch. So all I've got to do is turn this square hole into a round hole. And the good news is these little bits like this do a great job of that. Hang on a second, I'll show you a couple more here. Okay, these are a variety of chassis punches that I own, you know, designed to cut a nice, like this one cuts a nice, what size is this? I think this may even be the 3/4. 3/4. That would do a nice hole. I could screw this thing in here and start tightening it down and pop out exactly the hole I wanted. Or I could grab one of these larger style drill outs and drill it out that way. I might go with the punch though. That looks like it might be a little easier to hold on to than the drill piece. And we got the chassis punch mounted up here with the cutting teeth here on the other side. Got it aligned just perfectly. And now we gotta just take a wrench, half-inch wrench, and start tightening down until that thing pops a hole all the way through. Alright, check it out now. Tightened it and it pulled through. And nice neat little cut there. Matter of fact, this thing will drop in there and cover, you know, the edges here that go around will help cover up, you know, the flange on it will help cover up the two little spots right there. The one thing I am going to have to do is drill, cut a little notch in one side. If you'll notice on the side of these they have a little space, and it's designed to keep it from turning as you turn things on and off. So on this side right here I'll just cut a little bitty notch with a Dremel tool. I end up just using a file here, and I cut a nice little notch out here on the right hand side. Just enough for that that little line there to go into and keep it from turning. And check it out here. Nice little switch. Can't see the lines around it. The bezel covered up any rough edges there. It's locked in there good and tight. Won't turn left or right. Very, very happy with how this thing turned out here. Sometimes it's amazing what you can do when you have the right tools at hand. Otherwise, stuff like that could be a real pain to try to achieve. So, if you're going to get into this hobby, I highly recommend just along the way, as you need something, go and buy it, and sooner or later you will have it and need it again, and there it will be. So, nice. Okay, everybody, we're at a good breaking point. I'm going to go break this video right here into multiple pieces. It ended up being an hour and a half long, so I'm going to turn it into 3 pieces. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and check out part 2 and 3.